perceived challenges and way forward for the Indian overhead transmission industry. For this, I would like to request our Vice Chairman and moderator of the session, Mr. Jitendra Bist from Sterlite Power. Sir, welcome.
Thank you, Vivekji, and namaskar to all. Good afternoon. Thank you for taking time to join us in this important discussion. And my name is Jitendra Bist. I am the Vice Chairman of EMA Conductor Division. I'm pleased to extend a warm welcome to all and to our eminent speakers. And it's my privilege and honor to invite our distinguished guest. Today we have with us Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad. Vivekji, if you can put up the slides, please. Yeah. Shri Ghanshyam Prasad is Joint Secretary, Ministry of Power, responsible for O&M, R&R, including administration of National Electricity Policy, Tariff Policy, Standard Bidding Document. He brings all-round experience of transmission, distribution, regulatory affairs, and policy matters. Welcome, sir. Next, we have Shri KVS Babaji. He is CMD POSOCO, responsible for real-time operation of one of the largest grids in the world. And I welcome you, sir. Vivekji, your slide has not changed. Baba sir, namaskar and welcome.
Sir, screen is changed or not yet?
No, it is not changed. Yes. So I was welcoming Baba sir, and he's responsible for the real-time operation of one of the largest grids in the world, CMD POSOCO. Namaskar sir, welcome. Vivekji, the screen is gone again.
Yes, sir, I'm sharing. Just give me a moment. Yeah, there is a slide. I hope now it is visible.
It is yet to come up. Yes. Yeah. Next eminent speaker that we have today with us is, can you change the slide? Yeah, these are the perils of
Sir, I have
online
the slide. I hope that is not reflecting there. Okay, let me display it one by one.
Yeah.
Regret for the inconvenience. So connect nahi ho paa.
Is it my issue or there's some lag?
Maybe we have some network issue, but
okay.
Let me make it up. Yeah. I hope
in the interest of time, yeah, it is visible now. In the interest of time, allow me to go ahead. We welcome Ms. Seema Gupta. She is Director responsible for Operation Philosophy of Transmission Assets at Power Grid that owns half of India's transmission network. Welcome, ma'am. Yeah. Please welcome Shri S.K. Rai Mahapatra ji, Chief Engineer, Power Systems Engineering and Technology Development, CEA, responsible for steering technology agenda. Some of his recent works that were rolled out under his guidance were HTLS guidelines and guidelines for the validity period of type testing. Welcome, sir. I'll pause for a second so that audience can read. Going ahead, we have Vivekji. Can you change the slides, please?
Sir, I have changed the slide now, Mr. Desai.
Okay. It is not reflected here. So welcome Desai sir, Shri Chetan Desai ji. He is Managing Director, Apar Industries Limited, a leader in aluminum conductors and transformation oil. Welcome, sir. We have Shri Manish Agarwalji. He is the CEO of Infrastructure and Solutions Business Sterlite Power, a global power transmission developer and solution provider. He's an energy infrastructure specialist and a leading voice in industry matters, shaping policy priorities on trade and sustainability. Welcome, sir. I welcome Shri Vivek Chariji, Director at TAC Corporation, a leading hardware and accessories manufacturer. Welcome, sir. So, gentlemen, before I go ahead and dive into the conversation today, allow me to set some context around why we are here, and what is the way forward for the discussion today, and allow me to set some emerging trends and throw some lights on emerging trends that are there and which will pave a way for the discussion today. So India is expected to see the largest energy increase in terms of demand globally in next 2 decades. In fact, we are going to be the 3rd largest energy consumer by 2030, ahead of EU. In fact, it is projected that all 10 fastest growing cities from now to 2035 are going to be in India. India has also committed to scaling up of RE capacities from 175 gigawatt by 2022 to 450 gigawatts by 2030. And we also see there's a disruption in distribution sector imminent, with an implementation of reforms taking off. We are certainly in the midst of energy transition. However, I'm also motivated to say that the challenges are abound. Transmission infrastructure has to match the pace of RE development, limited availability of funds, public funds for capital intensive investments, increased urbanization and lack of space for building new transmission assets. And we also spoke about, during the course of the day today, we also spoke about aspects of cybersecurity. So with that, let me take you to the agenda today and directly go to Shri Ghanshyam Prasad ji and take his views on policy priorities and opportunities in the sector. And since sir has to leave by 12:30, and allow me to take a few questions directly to him and then go to other panelists in a round robin fashion. Welcome, sir. And my first question, with that context, that background, sir, my first question would be: what are the emerging opportunities that we see from the amendment that is expected in Electricity Act 2021, sir?
Thank you, Jitendra, and let me thank IMA for giving me this opportunity to be present in front of the august audience, and even the expert panelists, starting from the national grid operator to the national transmission utility, one of the largest transmission utility, and some of the key industry players, particularly in the transmission, and some key personnel from the industry side. You rightly said that we are waiting for reforms and how it is going to give an opportunity for this particular segment of the industry. Let me just brief you a bit. When we started reform a few years back, we were targeting initially on the supply side of it. Over the years, we have added a lot of generation capacity, and you must be hearing that we are now surplus in the generation capacity. And luckily that the focus a bit shifted towards transmission somewhere in 2014-15. And by now we have achieved almost constraint-free transmission network as well. This gets reflected in the market because we are seeing that most of the time the price in the market remains same, which means that there is no congestion, at least in the interstate networks. But there are issues in the intrastate networks and the distribution network. Because the ultimate goal with which we are proceeding with the reform is that the consumer must be served. And given reliable and quality power. At the same time, their services should also improve. These are the two key points we have tried to focus in the present reform structure. What I could see is that in the entire value chain of power sector, distribution is still the weakest link. And in some state, even the intra-state transmission is not adequate. Ultimately, what is reflected on this is the consumer suffers and consumer services suffers, and most of the cases consumer are not able to get serviced with 24/7 electricity. Keeping this in view, we have and the recent budget announcement, which you all must have captured, which was done on 1st of February 2021 by Honorable Finance Minister, wherein it was very clearly stated that we need to make a framework which gives choice to the consumers, and the consumers is required to be served properly. I mean, that's the key agenda which has now been mandated to us, and we had to go for a framework on that. In this context of budget announcement, we are trying to see what best possible reforms can be done in the distribution sector, and that is how we are trying to bring a bit of competition. Regarding the opportunity part, see, until unless there is an investment right now in the distribution sector, as I mentioned, that there is a bottleneck, and that bottleneck is of the system, the network. And this network, until unless investment comes in this particular sector, is not going to improve. And who is going to bring in investment? So we thought that why not to open it up, make the entry easier in this segment, just like what we did in 2003 in case of generation. We opened it up in 2003, and the net result was that a lot of players came into this segment and established generating capacity, and that is how we became surplus, and we are at least sufficient in terms of the supply side of it. The share of private sector in that segment is somewhere around 47%. If I go towards the transmission, we opened it somewhere in 2011. And in transmission as well, since 2011, number of projects have been given to the private players. And Sterlite is here, Mr. Manish, that has really led us to a lot of price reduction, particularly, and some of the projects have come before time. So, and there was a sense of competition which led to all aspects of improvement in the transmission network. Learning from these experience of last 17, 18 years since 2003, when we had the last Electricity Act, we thought why not to use this experience in the distribution sector also and come forward with this kind of a reform. The opportunity will be that the new players will be coming with the investment, and that is how they are being allowed to even lay the network wherever it is required to provide 24/7 quality power to the consumers. So I'll stop here for this part of the query.
Thank you, Prasad sir. I think that gives us a glean into what is coming up next as far as investment into distribution is concerned. And you also did touch upon the TBCB part, which is largely on the interstate. Any plans of the government to spur investment, private sector investment in intrastate, where, particularly states where there's limited public fund available and there's a huge requirement that may be foreseen. So your comments, please.
Yeah, in fact, I had been looking after transmission from ministry side for roughly 3 to 4 years, during which I had pushed on this concept of TBCB to a larger extent. And we had been pursuing with the states also to go ahead with that. We even asked the state if you want to take help of our bid process coordinators, that is REC as well as the PFCCL. These services were extended to the states, and some of these states did come forward. I think the recent bidding was in UP, if I'm not mistaken, and a number of projects were awarded through TBCB route. Rajasthan did some of them, Maharashtra did some. So people are now coming forward to give the projects under the TBCB route. And I think that's the only choice. I mean, if investment has to come, the players, external players, has to be facilitated, and they need to be given into this particular sector. In fact, going forward, not only the intrastate transmission. What I was trying to focus is even the distribution. See, right now the infrastructure is not as what is required. Hardly there is any place where there is N-1 contingency in the distribution network, not even at 33 kV level. I could see only a few places in some of the private discoms, Torrent and others, where in some of the key 33 kV substations, they have N-1 contingencies. But by and large, it is not there. And if you have to maintain reliable supply to the consumer without interruption, 24/7, I think you need a huge investment in this particular sector. To have some input from Government of India side, some push, we are also envisaging a reform-linked distribution scheme. That also was a part of the budget announcement. All of you must have noted on that part as well. And this is going to be worth 3 lakh crores. Which includes mostly it includes the infrastructure development, and this is a huge opportunity, and this is going to be till 2024. So next 4 years is going to see a huge investment in the distribution sector from this segment as well. So this is what we have envisaged. But besides this, even the states, some of the good states who are financially good, they will be taking their own augmentation systems, and that means that it is going to be much beyond 3 lakh crores what we are envisaging in next 4 years.
Thank you, sir. That's quite insightful. And no discussion is over without a mention of RE. And we see that storage is going to be a very, very critical part of RE integration. Do you envisage or ministry is planning any storage policy in lines of a successful national solar policy or something like that, sir? If I can have your comments there.
Yes, I think that's a very key question that you asked. I think we are getting some interruptions from some people. May I request others to kindly mute your mic, please?
I request all other participants to mute their mics. Vivek ji, can you see to that, please?
Yes, sir. Please carry on.
Apologies, sir.
Sorry. I was talking about the energy storage part, and I think you rightly asked me this particular question because, I mean, we have no option. See, one time we are at one place, we are getting the commitment from the international forums like COP22, and COP26 is also in the offing. What does it points to? It always points to a reduction in fossil fuel and going towards the non-fossil fuel. That is towards the cleaner energy. At present, we are at 38.5% of non-fossil fuel share, which is very, very close to 40%, which was a target given to us in the COP22, that is Paris Agreement, 40% of the installed capacity. And this was supposed to be achieved by 2030, which we have right now reached 38.5 at present. So that means within a year, I am expecting that we'll be reaching this at around 9 years ahead of what the target was given to us. But we are not going to stop here. And I think in your opening remark, you mentioned that we would like to enhance this target to 450 gigawatt or so. In fact, just to have a feel of the targets that we are trying to work out, we have now almost 3 sets of studies being carried out on this aspect. And one independent study is already done or is published by CEA, which also points towards 450 gigawatt, somewhere near to that figure. Then another report which has been released a few days back is by TERI. TERI has released that report, and that report is also pointing out with a scenario of 350 to 450, depending on different scenario figure. But in base case, they have 450 as the RE contribution. In both the scenarios, whether it is CA or TERI, they have also envisaged storage capacity to an extent of roughly 100 gigawatt hour. But the question is when? Both the study points out that it could be from 25 or 26 onwards, we will be requiring large quantity of storage. Because right now the given capacity, which is already there, and as I mentioned that we are having surplus capacity as on date. So that surplus capacity is acting as a balancing need, and this will continue without any further addition in the fossil fuel side. Maybe whatever is going to add, it will be only whatever the projects which are already in the pipeline, but not beyond that. But the main thing that we have to plan right now is which type of storage is going to be which is going to be suitable for Indian conditions. There are options. Options are the pump hydro, but again the cost is higher. But how to reduce this cost is one element, and one group is working on this particular aspect. That how do we promote pump storage hydro? Some of the key private players are also in this business, and there is a committee which is formed, and which is separate study is also is on the card. Then definitely the other conventional storage, that is battery and all, that is already there. And then the third part that comes is with the hydrogen mission, which has already been taken and announced by Niti Aayog and other ministries. So these storage, then what application that it is going to serve in the Indian grid context? One could be that the transmission element, which I think Manish will be in a better position to speak on this. We had a presentation by Sterlite, which had envisaged that if the storage is used as a grid element, then it is going to defer some of the investment in the transmission network, and it is going to be good for the RE integrations. The reason being these transmission lines, which are built for evacuation of RE power, particularly the solar, is used hardly for 6 hours. Beyond that, it is not used, and that too, the peak is hardly 2 hours. If I make a transmission line leading to a capacity of the peak hours, I am overbuilding that transmission line, and the cost is coming down to the consumer itself. So how do I reduce the impact of such cost of transmission line onto the consumer by using the storage type of thing as a grid element? So this now is going to be a part of the planning exercise which CA and CTU is supposed to do. And I think they must factor this particular thing in their studies as an element. And right now it may look to be slightly costlier because the storage price is high. But going forward, what is the projection as per the international experts is that the battery storage price is going to come down. And by 24-25, I think we are going to have a very, very competitive price of battery storage. And if we plan today, probably the things is that probably we are going to catch up onto that element. The second use that is going to come is in the as a distribution element as well. We do have a lot of capacities right at the distribution transformer itself, wherein the distribution transformer many a times gets overloaded. Can I not plan a storage, a small storage at these elements, so that I avoid the entire transmission of power from the generator to the load center? So a lot of savings in terms of losses is likely to take place if I try to plan in the distribution element. Some of the key pilots have already taken place to demonstrate that if we plan it in the distribution side, we will not only defer some of the investment, but we will also be able to do a load management in a much better way. So it can be used as an energy arbitrage and other elements. So a lot of good new concepts is going to come if we try to integrate storage into the grid management. So we are very much concerned about the storage, and that is how two sets of studies which is pointing towards that, and third study which is still the report has not come out, but it is likely to come out maybe in 2 to 3 months. It is being done by the LBNL under the US program. So that study is also pointing almost towards a similar result. But what now we want to do is, with respect to the storage study which has been is going on, is for the comprehensive storage policy, as well as a separate focus on the pump storage, because for Indian conditions, the pump storage is going to be the probably one of the very good options, because it's going to be in compliance with our Atmanirbhar Bharat concept as well. So I'll stop here with the storage part of.
That was quite comprehensive and quite deep insight, sir. Thank you very much. I understand that you have a hard stop at 12:30. In a minute or 2.
5 minutes I can spare for more.
So nice of you, sir. Thank you.
The other side of it.
Yes, we have mostly entire industry represented here in terms of the manufacturers and solution providers. So any closing remark in terms of opportunities and how should they be prepared for contributing in the energy transition?
Yeah, that is how I'm trying to point out right from my first word is that there is a huge opportunity, particularly in the sub-transmission and the transmission element. And it's very, I mean, it's the industry which needs to come forward and try to take this opportunity in strengthening the system. In fact, that is how we wanted to make the entry easy in the distribution element. Either you can come as a distribution company, or if you don't want to come as a distribution company, be a good supplier to the distribution companies. Maybe because since the demand is going to rise exponentially, I mean, the industry needs to catch up with that kind of requirement that is going to come. Because in what we have seen in the prepaid payment segment, Bihar always keeps on complaining that I want to go very fast, but I am not getting good supplier of prepayment meters. So that kind of situation should not arise. I know that particular matter has been resolved now because we had a number of discussions with the meter manufacturers. But I mean, I am now talking about all the elements which go into the sub-transmission and the distribution network, and even the intrastate transmission side. I mean, there's a huge opportunity. As I mentioned, that the network is still in a condition which cannot ensure 24/7 reliable power to the consumers. And now, having given 100% access to everyone, all the households, the next demand of the consumer is that I want quality power, I want 24/7, uninterrupted, affordable. I mean, you can add n number of adjectives to this particular thing, but they now want this type of services, best services, which any other consumers in any other part of the world they are receiving. And rather, we need to surpass that as well. With this closing remark, I'll thank once again to IMA and all the participants who are here. and wishing good luck for the endeavor, and request you all to kindly participate so that we are able to fulfill whatever the objectives which have been, the tasks which have been assigned to us. We need to go together, and I am very much confident that the reforms that the government of India is thinking and the industries are with us, and your support is with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And we wish you good health and well-being. Thank you very much. So taking the discussion forward, allow me to go to Sri KVS Babaji. And Baba sir, can you hear me?
Yeah. Okay, now I can.
Yes,
for quite
yes.
some
Thank
time,
you. Welcome,
I'm
sir.
not allowed to unmute. Okay.
Okay. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
I think, continuing the discussion, taking cues of what has been spoken thus far, India is committed to scaling the RE targets from 175 to 450 by 2030. As a grid operator, what do you see are the growth pockets in terms of technology and, growth pockets for equipment manufacturers and suppliers of solution?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jitendra and Aima, for giving me the opportunity to be among you, and very distinguished panel are there, and SK Negi Sahab is there, and many seniors and my colleagues. It is a privilege for me to be part of the group here and share my, opinions, I should say, with you. Reacting to the your question, yes, Mr. Ghanshyam has nicely covered. In fact, no other question is required to be answered by anybody, because he has presented an excellent view, overall sector and all. So, but still, because you asked me, I have to answer. Maybe I'll be repeating many things what he has said. See, the transmission as such, first of all, any renewable integration, as you said, is coming in a large capacity, and a lot of technology interventions and all have to be how we should orient. So, first of all, transmission is a great enabler, is a levelizer, and a risk mitigator for the power sector. There is no doubt in that. We are comfortable at the moment because we have a strong grid across India. So we should appreciate that the transmission is always a lumpy investment, and it will be looking, because while we are planning, we have to see future and the growth of various other parameters also. Therefore, planning the transmission is always a complex subject. Actually, we need to bear in mind the changing pattern of the demand, growth of generation, all types of generation, and various scenarios that need to be studied in the planning transmission. So the transmission planning, we have to, again, most important point is the techno-economics we have to see. So what is the technology also we have to see, and share numbers like a 20 gigawatt is coming from a state in the year 2024, 26 or 27, something like this. Then planning for all the 20 gigawatt through the transmission lines is once upon a time right, but now it is not. We have to think in a different manner. Like example, I'll try to give, as Mr. Ghanshyam has said, that storage has to be considered, and the interventions on the distribution also have to be considered in the transmission planning study, especially for renewable. Because the solar, as he has explained, solar generation is not available all the entire day. It is the diurnal variation is so much. So we need to see, and one more thing is that they are coming in a phased manner. So how to optimize the transmission investment and optimize the technology. Another important point is, as a system operator, I always see the end point. So how to manage such a big transmission, which is going to be used for only 8 hours a day. Then rest, 14 hours, how to manage the transmission, the voltage, the reactive power management. All those things have to be kept in mind. So that is why I said that planning studies have to consider the system operational studies also. So that is, it is a nice and interesting challenge for all the sector who are all in the planning side, also in the operation side. So, and another important point, which is very essential, is that flexibility. Ultimately, for integration of renewables, we have to see the flexibility. What technology, FACTS, STATCOMs, SVCs, all should be part of the planning exercise. So I feel, we have, and one more very essential fact is, now the transmission planning has to be more of a national perspective rather than a regional perspective. So we are still, most of the, we have been advocating for this. So the studies have to be carried it out on a all India perspective, but not on the regional perspective. To start with, let me stop here, Mr. Jitendra.
Thank you, sir. Well said. I think from a planning perspective, national view is more comprehensive and it'll take into account even the last mile, which may or may not be missing today. If I can go ahead and talk about one of the PM's vision around one sun, one grid, one world, one grid. If you can throw some light around what are what is the role that POSOCO is going to play and some of the opportunities emerging out of that initiative, and what is the timeline that you see around one sun, one world, one grid initiative, sir?
Again, as I said, as a system operator, the transmission is the best friend, and the interconnections are the best friends. So, as you know, India earlier it started with a one state operation. Then we come to the regional operation, isn't it? Then all regions were connected. Now all India. Now already we have excellent connections with Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and so we are already part of the interconnected system operation trans-country, cross-country already. So this is going to, and any interconnections with any country is going to play basically equalizing economics, and the time variation are going to be encashed, and diversities. The most important point is the diversities are being encashed. So any interconnection is a welcome. As a system operator, we would best use of the facility that has been provided. Yeah, but only thing is that only the last question that you asked is is that when would you like to? When would you anticipate that this will happen? It is actually a multi-layered coordination. There are technical issues, regulatory, technical things. Okay, we all are in the field. We'll manage. But whereas regulatory and policy-oriented and a very strong communication means it is intergovernmental communication. It is not by optical fiber. So how quickly you can establish that makes the how quickly. We are already trying a dialogue with Myanmar also. There is a dialogue going with Sri Lanka also, and there are many international funding agencies like World Bank, ADB, all are supporting this, and there is a big team working under this. In the International Solar Alliance also is working towards this, and so I'm sure you are aware that EDF has been appointed as the consultant for the first stage for preparation of this. So we are all hoping to learn from them or listen from them, and how things are going to take shape. And definitely it is a great initiative, no doubt about it. But a lot of other issues which we have to see how it shapes up. And actually what happens is in any interconnection, Of course, this is not right. I mean, not wrong to everyone. What is in it for me? Everybody will start with this. What is in it for me? There the things get stuck also. So somebody has to go little beyond what's there in for us. Then the things will change. I mean, this is a very small, my view is.
Thank you, sir. I think
And
I
now
have one
we are
more
also,
question.
another important thing is that we are going towards the optimization. See, the resources are there. How to use the resources more optimally, techno-economically, so that the solution should be techno-economic and operation should be optimized. So there should be synergy. So this is what we have to move. We have moved from the deficit to sufficiency and sufficiency to now we have to, the era is now optimization. You know that security concerned economic dispatch, what we are doing is that a generator in the south is reduced and the cheaper plants in western region are being, because we have a strong grid. So once this OSOWOG comes, so some diesel generator of Bangladesh can be reduced and our generation can be increased, so that they are reduced. I mean, so the optimization comes, the economy comes. So these are the benefits. So I mean, the earlier it comes, better it would be.
Thank you, sir. I have one more question around cybersecurity, but however, allow me to continue this line of thought and go to Ms. Seema Gupta, who is running the operations of one of the largest utilities in the world. Ma'am, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. I think continuing the discussion around one sun, one world, one grid, I understand PGCIL is also taking a lead around this initiative and many other ventures, including EV charging. I also understand. I also read through the presentation around the analyst presentation of PGCIL. I understand you have 47,000 crores of projects in hand. So we are talking about transmission as a core business, and we are talking about some of the international initiatives and EV charging, which is an emerging sector. How can private sector contribute in these endeavors, ma'am?
Yeah, thank you, Jiten. And first of all, I may sound repetitive, but thank you, Aima, and my fellow panelists. I'm really very happy to be sharing my views with the elite panelists and the participants. Now, your question has two parts. One sun, one world, one grid. I think that something has already been covered by Mr. Baba. And the interconnection, how the interconnection helps in reducing the charges is a very success story. What India has already shown to the world when we are operating in a compartment on a state basis, regional basis, though we had the resources, but they could not be transmitted. There, the transmission plays a very active role. Now, having established an Indian grid on a synchronous Indian grid, we are also connected because of our geographically located, we are connected to the nearby countries. And these links has been established with a win-win situation. Initially, like Bangladesh, Nepal, they have a lot of gas resources and hydro resources, but there was some time till those resources are exploited fully. So it was initially India may supply power to them and subsequently they may supply. So it was a win-win situation, as being pointed out by Mr. Baba, what is there in me. So it was seen it is there for both these countries, there'll be benefit. With the Bhutan, they had a lot of hydro resources and India had demand. So we connected with Bhutan, and it is on the power is coming. Now, coming to the one sun, one grid, India again is very centrally placed between Central Asia and Southeast Asia, and we can play a very, very active role. If we see the latitude span between the Iran and Vietnam is about 64 degrees. So it means there is a difference in the peak hours between Iran and Vietnam is almost about 4.5 hours to 5 hours. Now, my previous panelist has said there's a talk going on for the storage, and we want to increase our renewables to take it to a 450 gigawatt. And then we all know that we have to go either for storage or for the balancing, go for pump storage or go for the battery storage. But interconnection can also be a very viable alternative with these countries. Some of these countries have solar resources abundant. Iran has nuclear resources. The Southeastern Asia's countries have a hydro resources. So by interconnecting them, the resources of all these countries can be optimally utilized, and each country need not have the reserves which are required, as we have seen in the Indian grid. So the success story of Indian grid can be replicated on a much larger platform, and we are seeing in the outside world, a lot of successful pools are operating, which are optimizing. So it's a very good concept, but seeing the type of maturity in each market, the little more effort on the policy level, on the technology level would be needed. Now, from the private participation, as and when these links are planned, and India now wants to be Atmanirbhar in all the aspects we want to go. So we want to build up the manufacturing capabilities in India. My Indian vendors should be in a position to offer the solution. We don't have to look east or west for the solution. So the lot of opportunities which are available as the country would be gearing up at the technological level, at a political level, at a dialogue level, the same type of advanced preparations would be needed from the Indian manufacturers. They will have an active role to play. Now, coming to the EV charging, certainly recently the Government of India has launched Go Electric, where the transport, Gadkari ji was also present and Honorable Minister was present. So the next aim for the utilization of electricity would be in the transport sector, that we need to shift from the diesel and petrol to the electric. And one study was conducted by CEEW, which says we need about 2.9 million public charging points by FY30, which currently is only about, I think, 1,800. And it may need an investment of about 20,000 crores. So there also, while the government is making the policies, the lot of PSUs or lot of private companies are coming forward for establishing the EV charging stations. So the private sector can also look how the charging infrastructure can be made very competitive within India, the cost of the equipment. So there the contribution of private sector would be of paramount. So there are a lot of opportunities in the transmission sector as well as in the EV charging. In fact, in the Go Electric, the cooking was also added, that we should shift to cooking on video on. Okay. So we should be going for the cooking also we should shift. So as far as the electrical sector is, the electricity sector is concerned, it is a huge potential, huge opportunities are available where both the government sector and the private sector can contribute to take it forward. Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think coming back to some of the operational challenges that I can touch upon regarding the transmission lines in the country. How are you dealing with the ROW issues and during the construction of the line? Your thoughts, ma'am.
Yeah. ROW, I think, is the most challenging thing while we are constructing the line. So always our endeavor, it has to be a two-pronged approach. One is how to reduce the right-of-way requirement for the new lines. And number two, how to increase the transmission capacity of the existing lines, because there are various corridors where the existing lines are there. And with the rapid urbanization, the corridors have shrunk. So how to address these problems? So we can take one by one. In the case of new lines, when we go for higher voltage, as Indian Grid has seen. We went from 132 kV to 220 kV to 400 kV to 800 kV. And in fact, indigenously, the 1200 kV station has already been tested. with the effort of all the indigenous manufacturers, it's running successfully. And when the country is ready for such an amount of power transfer with the increased growth, that can be indigenously built. Now, we can also use the narrow base towers that lead to the reduction in the capacity of the base from, say, 15 meters to 10 meters, and the space utilization can be optimized. Then we can go for old type towers, where it is 3 meters as compared to 15 meters. And then we can go for multi-circuit. Multi-circuit we can go. Another would be the use of the capacity, use of the conductor, the high performance conductor or the high temperature low sag conductors, where on the same corridor, the power transfer capacity can be enhanced. Now, when I talk about HTLS or high performance conductor, what I see in the high voltage level, the transient stability plays an active role, as also pointed out by Mr. Ghanshyam. And before the thermal limit is touched, the transient stability put into factor. So judiciously we have to use the lines which are very short, where the power transmission can be transmitted up to thermal limit. There the changing of the conductor would certainly help. But in the case of major cities, metros and all, where the rapid urbanization is coming in the way of putting new lines, so there the existing lines where the transient stability and the thermal limit are almost hand in hand. So there the changing the conductor with a high performance conductor will certainly help in increasing the capacity of the transmission line. So there's no one solution for every voltage level or every class of transmission lines. It has to be judiciously seen for both. So the high performance conductors can be used for the new lines, even in the higher capacity. Nowadays, we are using a lot of HTLS conductor. Earlier, we were building the lines with the quad, that is 4 conductor, when we're using the ACSR and all. Now, same performance can be achieved by using a twin HTLS conductor. So there is a lot of things, then opportunity available for using these technologies in the Indian power sector.
Thank you, ma'am. We have a good fortune of having also CEA, and I'll take this discussion regarding the technology aspect of transmission to CEA. I welcome Shri S.K. Rai Mahapatra Saab. Sir, if I may ask, on the same lines, what are the PPP opportunities in R&D for specifically transmission and distribution sector? That would be my part 1 question, sir.
Distinguished dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, very good afternoon to all of you. I must thank first of all IMA for giving me this opportunity to be part of this interactive session and share my views. Actually, this topic is such a vast, important topic. I have little knowledge, so to say, to comment on such an important topic, that is research and development. One can imagine it includes everything. So we cannot comment on this, but I will just share my views on this, because research and development, basically it is an ongoing process. You cannot say that once you have achieved something, that is over. So there is always something there to research and develop on that particular area. So that is one aspect what I feel. And in our country particularly, we have a vast transmission system or transmission network.
Presentation.
Yeah, the country like India, where we have a vast transmission network and a vast power transmission system, and we have opportunity, we have challenges. So naturally in the transmission sector, we have a lot of things to develop. And a small example, I can give some of the examples, I will come with that. Actually, this R&D, what I find is always, we expect that when we go for R&D, it has to be a success. So that concept has to be removed from our mind. R&D cannot be always a success. That can be a failure also. So we have to accept the failure and we have to proceed forward. So we cannot say that always we will get something, and if you don't get it, then we leave there itself, we will not proceed further. So I will just give an example in our transmission system, and particularly in our short circuit testing lab. Just giving an example where you are using a transformer, testing transformer. That transformer we are unable to manufacture, although we have 600 transformer manufacturers, but we have not taken the initiative to develop a testing transformer which will be suitable for our requirement. But still then you see, we got the transformer from outside for testing, but it has failed twice. But still then we depend on them. But why we cannot develop such type of things in our country where we have 600 manufacturers, around 9 manufacturers, we are capable of developing transformers up to 765 kV and HVDC also. And it is a good news that we are not a failure. Rather, we have a success at 1200 kV level, which is successfully operating only through our indigenous manufacturers. So we cannot say we cannot do it. We can do it, but our objective has to be there. Once we fail, we should not leave it. We should continue with this process. And if you see, the industry knows very well where is the requirement of research. They know better than anybody else. So they should focus on the area where they need research, and they should tie up with the academic institutes. Again, I will give you one example, small example, since this is a conductor seminar. I am one of the member of that transmission research group funded by Government of India and managed by CPRI. In one of the proposal, I could see some proposal has come from academic institute regarding the development of core material for high temperature, high performance conductor. It's unfortunate that they have not contacted any manufacturer in the country. What is their requirement? We had to inform that this is the requirement. We are importing this core material from outside, but you are developing, you be in touch with our manufacturers. They know better, they can guide you what sort of research is required, what development is required. They have developed something. So this is the way what I mean to say. And one more thing, always we cannot, then some percentage of the profit or their turnover, each and every manufacturer or industry has to invest in R&D. So that concept is still not there in our country. So unless we have that sort of concept, how can we expect that research and development will go on? And we cannot always expect that research and development will give you return. That concept also, again, we have to think. Whenever we go for any business, we always think in terms of return. I have invested this much, I should get this much return. Certain researches will never give you return, but you have to invest and proceed forward in the developing world to be one of the leader in the global forum. That is my view as far as R&D is concerned. In general, there are areas also. So
Sure, sir. Very passionate views I can hear. Thank you. And changing gears, if I may seek your comment around perspective distribution plan. I think this is the first time the country has come up with a perspective distribution plan. We used to have a generation and transmission plan. So if you can help us glean into what this plan will entail and some of the opportunities that may emerge from the planning. Your view, sir.
Actually, this was the right, you could have asked this question who was directly involved. Mr. Ghanshyam was directly involved in this process. So I cannot contribute much, but I know that this has not come out. The report is what Mr. Ghanshyam was saying is correct. That has not come out. Some process is still left out so that it will be public and people know what is there. But this planning process, it does not give the entire concept. Only they can give only how many substations will be there, how many kilometers of line will be there, that's all. And that is the distribution sector is again a state subject. So center cannot interfere in totality. So whatever has been given by the states, that we have to project. We cannot modify much because it is their requirement, it is their year, but sensibly we have to take into account whether their requirement and whether their projection is up to the as per expectation or something else, what we plan for the entire country. That's all I can say. But otherwise, Mr. Ghanshyam, who was directly involved in distribution. And the second part, this 22-27 is yet to start, like our transmission planning process has already been started. National Prospective Plan, National Plan already been started for transmission for 2022-27. I think for distribution, they are yet to start this process.
Thank you, sir. Let me take this discussion to Shri Manish Agarwal ji. Welcome, sir.
Again, thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Jiten. Can
Yes.
you hear me? Yeah.
Yes. Welcome, sir. I think allow me to ask you a question around what are the high points of transmission sector in last decade, and since we have the entire government machinery, I think that's a right forum to ask you around the high points of transmission sector in last 1 decade.
So thank you, Jiten. Good question. It makes me think you're asking about last decade. So I'll have to really apply my mind and think, and come out with what all has happened. But before I do that, good afternoon, everyone. And it's my privilege to be on the panel where I see eminent panelists. You heard Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad, Mr. Baba, Seema ma'am, Mr. Mahapatra. We will hear from Mr. Desai and Vivek Chari. So once again, thank you for letting me be on this panel. And I also thank EMA and the division, conductor division, for organizing this national seminar and the panel discussion. So going back to your question, Jiten, so the government has played a pivotal role in spurring private investment in the sector, debottlenecking some of the critical challenges and creation of funds which have been aimed at development of power sector. Some of the high points I can think are number one would be usage of technology and innovation in this sector for delivering the projects in shorter time with quality and safety, and also giving us a higher capacities on the existing corridors. Examples would be aviation, where our country has used helicranes in building transmission projects. Drones are being actively used. We have talked about, Seema ma'am did throw some light on HTLS conductors. We have in the country seen some projects on live line reconductoring. Seema ma'am did talk about urban places where we could augment the capacities, and one such project was done in Bangalore by our own company, which was 66,000 volts line being operated without taking any shutdown. So this is one good thing that has happened to the sector. Second would be impetus on the power transmission investments in the country. There have been adequate focus and investment in this sector. Third would be the TBCB, which is Tariff-Based Competitive Framework, and it's a strong payment security mechanism which has opened the development of transmission projects to the private sector. Also, there have been clear guidelines with respect to ROW and forest clearances, which were issued in 2015, while a lot more to be done. But this was also a point which Seema ma'am did talk about. Another one would be around energy access, Make in India, industrial growth, EV penetration, which boosts electricity demand. These require a sizable installed capacity generation. On top of these, I can think of PSGF fund, which has enabled development of power systems in the country, which is so important. Also would be government's plan to set up ultra mega RE parks in Ladakh and offshore wind energy in the coastal regions, which have been the right steps in this direction by the country and by the government. So these are some of the high points, Jitendra, I can think of towards the last decade, what has happened in this sector good. Thank you.
Thank you. A follow-up question around, Manishi, a follow-up question around the transmission sector. What are the key shifts that you think are important or going to shape the transmission landscape?
Thank you, Jiten. Good question again. Over the past decade, if you see, the total power capacity has witnessed commendable growth with more than 370 gigawatt of generation capacity currently installed in India, including about 90 gigawatt of RE capacities. Going forward, we have envisaged to add more than 400 to 500 gigawatt of RE by 2030. So transmission sector will drive the energy transition in the country and must optimize the twin objectives of number one is energy access and second is affordability in the country. Transmission planners, I believe, should carry out objective evacuation of transmission plans around the key factors of time, space, and capital. And to attain its true potential in the next decade, I would say that the industry will have to move towards flexible transmission network planning, freedom of design to promote innovation in the sector, capacity augmentation of existing transmission infrastructure, which is the uprates and upgrades, and energy storage, which Mr. Ghanshyam Prasad, Mr. Bawa, they also talked about. Energy storage solutions standalone and also with transmission to meet the flexibility requirements going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Manishji. Going to Chetan Desai, sir. Welcome, sir, to the panel. Allow me to ask you, how can conductor industry, on the topic of conductor, how can conductor industry contribute to the overall energy transition that we see and we spoke about this afternoon? Your comments, sir.
Thank you to IEEMA for inviting me to be part of this panel. What I can say is that over the last decade or so, the conductor industry has invested a lot of capex on making its capability to have the production of the various type of high performance conductors and some of the allied products used in the transmission system, and also in building and upgrading skill sets. And of course, IEEMA has played a very pivotal role in promoting and providing these kind of forums where people have been able to share their experiences, so that the central utility experiences could be also shared to the state utilities, and they could also take benefit of some of these products that are now available. Of course, the challenges are there in the industry, and some of these technologies are kind of helping towards that. I would also like to share a few global perspectives of what we are seeing in utilities elsewhere, and what the Indian industry has done in terms of meeting the global requirements. And maybe if the Indian utilities find it useful, they could look at the similar activity here in India. So one thing which we see globally is that utilities, because of the renewable energies, are looking at much more robust systems. So more durable, more inherent capacity, more efficient in terms of line losses. So this is one of the important things we are seeing. Another is that governments worldwide are pushing the utilities for very careful looking at the carbon dioxide emissions and for safer options. So environmentally sustainable products, they may be a little expensive in the initial phase, but over the life cycle of the product, it is found to be much cheaper because these generally have a lower I-square losses. And also with the lower temperature, it is actually helping in the entire carbon dioxide footprint. The other angle is on the safety, which we are seeing that with heavily congested populated areas, with growing urbanization, and also the environmentalists clamoring for safer environment for the birds, animals, human beings, different innovative products like low loss covered conductors, even low sag conductors, these are kind of now picking up. Another thing which we are seeing is climatic changes, which we were not seeing earlier to a great extent now, causing even the conductor requirement to change in certain areas, like the more polluted areas in the industrial parks. There, some of the conductors we have seen which have got reconductored, they are horrible practically to see, that they've really lost their, shine, they've lost their conductivity to a great extent. So definitely there is a need to kind of look at upfront when the new lines are being put, or even if some reconductoring is being done, then, the right choice of conductor could be chosen. So here, we've seen also with the increasing cyclones and avalanches and snowstorms, the transmission lines needs to be much more resilient to take care of these natural disasters. So we've seen, shaped conductors Sometimes it's trapezoid, sometimes it's Z-shaped, which provide excellent aerodynamic drag resistance and can withstand these kind of wind pressures. So this is another phenomena we've seen in the marketplace, and the Indian industry has risen to the occasion. One more area which we see is that with the data transfer requirements, the utilities are additionally leveraging their system, their network, to get additional revenue. So here again, they are replacing a lot of these earth wires with the optical fiber ground wires. And the Indian industry has built its full capability, and we are, I think, collectively exporting to over 125 countries for conductors. Another point, we are seeing that with the aging system in India, some of these old lines which have been built by NTPC in the 70s and 80s, some of those have crossed their normal service life. So, what we've been seeing is that some of these really need to be upgraded, some of these old lines, because they are actually not helping the cause of giving the power 24/7. So definitely we request that the policymakers and decision makers, they look at replacing the ACSR conventional conductors, which are more susceptible to this corrosion, with the alloy products or certain other solutions which are available now, the aluminum, magnesium, silicon alloys. So this is in short my answer here.
Like you answered my next question around aging infrastructure in the country. Thank you very much, Desai sir. Going to one of the leading hardware manufacturers in the country. Welcome, Mr. Chari from TAG Corporation. Same question to you, sir, around how is the industry prepared, and do we have sufficient capacities in the country for this energy transition, where conductor and accessories are going to be a critical component in transmission lines? Your comments, please.
Yeah, thanks, Jitendra. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. It's a privilege to be here. In terms of addressing the capacity issues of the hardware industry, I think over the last 10 years, I think the hardware industry has grown dramatically, and we are able to cater to all the projects that are currently coming out in the country. So I'd say in terms of capacity, I think we have a very good capacity, and I think as the requirement grows, we should be able to handle this growth without any problem. I do take part in some meetings of SIGRI, which is a European organization. And one thing I would like to point out is, unlike many other countries that participate in those forums, it is a pleasure to see that India is investing so much in HTLS conductors, which you don't see many of the other countries risking. They are very, they're very, I think, risk averse, whereas India, having the capacity of the network that we have and the size of the country, I think we are one of the very few countries that are investing in almost all types of HTLS conductors, whether it is polymer matrix core, whether it is gap conductors, whether it is INVAR or ACSS. It's very good to see that the Indian industry is taking these chances and investing in very good technology that is already well established in many parts of the world, but we are doing it all at the same time. So I think that is definitely commendable. Apart from that, I think there has been a general delay in the testing facilities that we have had in the country. But I think we have caught up over the last few years. I think India has many more testing facilities now to test conductors or hardware fittings, and that will definitely give a boost to the industry, who were always fearing to go out of the country to test these products. But today, I think there is a lot of testing facilities here to do that. So those are some of my points regarding this future growth and plan that we have.
Thank you, Mr. Chari. I think we had scheduled for 1 hour and we have already exceeded 15 minutes. If I can take a liberty to ask 2 more questions to the panelists, hope that's okay. Question 1 to, and this is a panel, this is a question that has got in my chat, to Seema ma'am. And question is about, is PGCIL using AL59 conductors?
Okay, she's gone. Let's see.
Okay. Sure.
Somebody can check if she's there.
Yes,
Sure.
madam is there. I'll have to check.
I'm seeing her in the dashboard.
Shivam, if you can hear us, and you have to.
Maybe you can take the next one and
Yes.
yeah.
Next question is precisely to you, Manishji. What are the key issues in transmission development in the country today, and what support do we seek as an industry from the government?
That's a great question, Jitendra. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Great question. Thank you for taking up. So I'll start with states. I see that states play a very important role in development of critical infrastructure, especially the transmission infrastructure. Let it be interstate or intrastate, where states have the footprint. Government has been doing a lot in easing out the businesses with respect to ROW and regulatory clearances, but I feel that there is a lot more improvement needed. Maybe a nodal agency, a monitoring group, which reviews on a weekly, monthly basis and helps the companies, to get these clearances at the required space to complete the projects in time or before time. To meet the country's RE goals, there is an urgent need for transmission capacities to be augmented parallel to RE generation to evacuate power from RE-rich regions to consumers across the country. That would be another one. Again, coming back to states, states need to extend their support for for example, the first one would be timely issuance of Section 164 clearances, statutory clearances granted by CEA for ISTS lines and by the state government for the intrastate lines. Second would be notifying, revising, and updating compensation rates for ROW. Third, I can talk about is extending local administrative support and accessing the site and resolving ROW issues. Another one, which is again around clearances, very important, is around forest, wildlife, and local body permits, which are granted in prescribed timelines. While there is an improvement, but as I said, a lot more needs to be done there. Due to compressed timelines and project execution, a state support agreement, which is SSA, which is very similar to roads and airport sector. This needs to be replicated in our power transmission transmission sector. This is very important. SSAs are a recognition of the fact that no project can be commissioned in time and cost without explicit support from the state government. So this is something that we could do or government could look into for our sector, the SSA for power transmission sector. So these are a couple of things I can think which can support and alleviate the things. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Manishji. A question from one of the participants. If S.K. Rai Mahapatra ji can hear me, sir.
Yeah.
Is there any insight on cybersecurity issues on the grid, especially in light of Mumbai grid failure? What can be potentially undertaken? If that question, if you can attempt that question, sir, please.
Actually,
if it is of your area, sir.
It's not my area, but exactly there is a committee constituted by ministry, and one of our group, other group is dealing with the cybersecurity issues, and they are coming with some report how to handle the cybersecurity. A lot of discussion is going on. I am one of the member, but I cannot focus exactly what has happened to particularly for this Bombay incident. They were going into details of all these cybersecurity issues. Our IT people, they were looking after all these things.
That's okay, sir. In fact, I wanted to, touch upon this aspect, very critical aspect. This has been spoken about even in the, even by Sandesh Sharma ji during his opening address today, and also touched upon by by yourself and Ghanshyam Prasad ji today. That said, I'll move on to another question. Probably this is the last question in the interest of time. And thank you for spending more the time than what we requested. The question is about the preparedness of primary and secondary industry, whether they have sufficient capacities for new age conductors. I'm hoping it is, and I'm deciphering, is it about the metal part? If some of the panelists can attempt that question. If I can go to Desai Saab, if I can ask that question to you around the secondary and primary industry having sufficient capacities. That's the question for new age conductors.
So the prime producers in India, as we call them, they are already doing a lot of alloy rod business. And some of these products like the L59 is like a variation of the same 6201 in the same family of products. So once the demand is grown, then automatically we would expect these prime producers to also supply. In addition to the prime producers, there are many people such as ourselves who are also in the market, and we are able to cater to the requirements of all the customers, if they need any of these type of rods. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Desai sir. I request. Sorry.
Yeah, Mr. Bist, actually somebody was asking about AL59. So I just want to bring to the notice of everybody, because in TVC projects, we are giving option to ACSR and AAAC and AL59 also. So there is a use of AL59 wherever is required. Not that we are not using. In TVC projects, we are also specifying for use of AL59 wherever it is required.
Thank you for pointing out, sir. In fact, I must say and congratulate CA's effort along with the BIS and CTU from bringing out the technical standards for the same technology, sir.
Yeah, very, very right, Jiten.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think in the interest of time, allow me to pose a request around any closing remarks from any of the panelists. In fact, all the panelists, I must say, before we officially close the session today.
From
Seema ma'am, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was saying that a great session. As I said, eminent panelists, and I could see, you have called from Kosovo, CA is there, Ministry of Power was there, Power Grid, our largest central utility being there, and some of the eminent panelists from great panel, and we had this elaborative questions touching all the parts of power transmission, including the RE sector. So, and great to see this national seminar on new products, which is around new age products, new age conductors, HTLS you call, high performance conductors you call. I think it's happening on a national platform. So great to see, privileged to be a part of this session. And as I said in one of my questions, technology and innovation would be key to drive and build transmission lines around time, space, and capital. Thank you.
So, Mr. Bist, I have one point to bring out to notice everybody, because if you see the conductor business, so every year we are adding around 20,000 kilometers of transmission line. So if you translate it in terms of conductor, particularly 220 kV and 400 kV and 765 kV level, it amounts to around 2 to 3 lakhs kilometer of conductor at different voltage level of different sizes. And world over, if you see actually still the conventional conductor ACSR and AAAC dominate the entire market, which is more than 80%. This is the research by Seagrave. They have done some research about the use of this type of conductor. They had mentioned that still the conventional conductor dominate the entire market with ACSR and ACCC. So rest of the things has to be from other types of conductors. And in when we are manufacturing, we are capable of manufacturing this type of conductor, high performance conductor the core material we are importing from outside, that part also we should see how we can develop it indigenously so that our cost part, which is not comparable with our conventional conductor, will come down. That is one aspect. And other aspect, if you see, why we cannot diversify this product? This is a conductor basically. Little bit from this type of manufacturing to a conductor which is mostly used for GIS, which is this aluminum alloy conductor. That is this manufacturing may not be very difficult because we are still importing this type of conductor from outside. China prepare most of the this aluminum alloy conductor which is used in GIS, and since we are using aluminum alloy as our envelope in basic high performance conductor, why we cannot think of in that line? Our conductor manufacturers can also think in that line to come out with this aluminum alloy conductor for GIS manufacturers, which is picking up very fast in our country, GIS installations. So that is one of my suggestions for this forum. Thank you.
Very valid, sir. Noted. Very valid. Noted, sir. I think I got a private chat that Ghanshyam sir is back on the panel, and he has a question to ask, if I'm reading it right. Ghanshyam sir, welcome back. Thank you for joining again. I couldn't have asked for more.
Thank you, Jitendra. I think I joined. I was just listening just last 5-10 minutes. I was back on the board. I think last I could hear is there was some question that was regarding the cyber security, if I heard it correctly, and I think the question was posed to Mr. Mahapatra in light of the Mumbai disturbance. In fact, we had been investigating this particular case right from the day it happened as a ministry. And so far, we have not got anything which is linked to cyber in Mumbai case. I mean, that's really finding what has come out. And that has also come out through the CA report as such. So just to clarify that particular point, but the most important thing which I just wanted to say to the August gathering here is, because all of the manufacturers are also here, is we have to be very, very careful because these equipments, particularly the transmission, also has a communication element. And if it has a communication element, and the moment we are now going for the smart meters, and integrating right from the consumer with all the smartness, all the communication, bi-directional communication, the things are going to be very, very, it has to be protected from the cyber security point of view. And that is how we reviewed even at the minister level recently, wherein we had invited CERT and NCIAP, and all of them said that we need to have a very stringent protocol to ensure that none of the equipment which is being imported from outside, even if it is required. I mean, first priority definitely is that we need to have our own manufacturing units in it. But there are certain circumstances in which we do need to import some of the equipment from outside. These equipments need to be doubly sure that no element of cybersecurity, which affects the cybersecurity, is there. So, it's the responsibility. It should be the responsibility of each one of us to ensure this particular thing. I think we will be shortly coming out with some kind of again advisory and guidelines on this particular aspect. But in light of the recent media coverage, as well as what was being reported in the New York Times and others, I think we have to be very, very careful because, as I mentioned, our network, our grid is one of the largest grid in the world, and people are eyeing on it. We have to be careful, and we cannot let our consumers go in dark. And the responsibility of this is not only to the grid operator, it is to each and every one of us, even to the extent of consumers who is going to have a smart meter. Maybe tomorrow this particular element will be communicating even with the devices that you have in your own house. So as we are moving towards the digitization and more automation, probably this particular element is very key element. And that's how I thought I'll just intervene into this, and as a last word of this session. Thank you so much.
Very well
Sir,
said.
thank you for picking up that point. In fact, I was reading recently about Telangana 40 substations experience or the successfully thwarting the threat of malware. That was another instance that we kind of suffered, and successfully we came out of that. So yes, thank you for picking it up, sir. Yes. So I think with that, allow me to officially close the webinar today. It was very insightful discussion. Thank you for